Hello and welcome to episode 3 of SPOILD here at SIFTD Games and SIFTD.net. This is where we talk about spoilers, about your favorite kind of content, whether that's going to be movies, whether that's going to be TV shows, or even video games. And today we're going to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog movie. I'm your host, Mitch Sikorski. You can find me at Mitch Sikor on Twitter, and I'm joined by the co-host of Game Face, Matt Keil, which you can find him at mkeil on Twitter. Matt, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. This is the first piece of content that we've done together, Matt, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation about talking with Sonic with you. So if you don't know who we are SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. Check us out there. This is one of our initiatives to do audio-only based content, so this is not available in video form, so you can check out the material there, and you can check it out on your favorite podcast feed at SIFTD Radio Podcast. That's where you'll be able to find it. We are fully supported via Patreon. So if you like this material, send us a few dollars via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/SIFTD and just send us a few dollars. It really does go a long way for the website and for us making more material in the future. If you're not able to do that and you do have an Amazon Prime account, you can link that account to Twitch and be able to send us a free $2.50. So if you're able to do that, that would be amazing as well. So let's just get started right away. I mean, this is spoilers. So if you have not seen the film, go see it and then come on back. If not, you can get spoiled or not. But I do have a question for you, Matt, that's a little bit not about Sonic for a quick second, because you did 2 short films. You got done wrapping those up last week. And I just wanted to ask you, because you were able to do that before you saw this Sonic movie, I was just curious if your mindset or the way you saw this film, did you see it any differently because you had this experience with doing your own film production?
No. I followed how film production works my whole life, pretty much. And while this is the first actual films I've done television production for 20 years, and it's honestly not that different.
Oh, okay.
The difference in these short films is that I own them.
Which is nice
that
to have.
We made them ourselves. I wasn't making them for a corporate entity. We were making them for ourselves, and we are going to own the rights to them and take them around ourselves after we're done with them. That's the main difference. Making stuff, filming stuff, we've known how to do that for years. It's more it's more who ends up with the rights to it at the end at this point.
Okay, very cool. So I just wanted to get, first of all, your initial thoughts of the franchise itself. Like, what is your experience with Sonic the Hedgehog?
Well, I'm a Sega fan more than a Nintendo fan from way back, so Sonic was always preferential to some degree. My favorite Sonic game is the first one. Like, I don't think it ever got any better than the first one. There's some mechanical improvements in Sonic 2, but I don't think it has the charm of the first game. And I'm not like a crazy Sonic fan from way back. Like I didn't watch the cartoons, the Sad-Am. I didn't watch any of that. I didn't read the Archie comics and all the mythology behind all that. Like, I realized that Sonic fandom is a deep, dark, like, fathomless hole you can disappear down if you choose to. I have not really done that. I've played I'd say 90% of the games that were ever made with him in it, and I like him as a character visually for the most part. I am not a hardcore Sonic fan. Like, I am not a Sonic fan the way I'm a Star Wars fan or a Transformers fan.
Okay.
But I do know the ins and outs more or less. Like, I recognize a lot of the so-called deep cuts in the movie that show up here and there. I'm familiar enough with it that I recognize things. I know about the Ken Penders controversy. I know all the kind of the weird little things that have occurred over the course of the fandom, but I know a lot of that through hindsight and retrospectives and not having lived it as it happened. That's how I'd describe it.
Okay, I'm proud. I do not know anything about that controversy, so
look it up. It's the whole Echidna thing. It's amazing.
Okay, so
if we had another 3 hours, we could go into it here. But it's just look up the Ken Penders Archie comics situation. It's amazing.
Okay, my experience. So my first console was a PlayStation 1, but my dad also had a Sega Genesis. Mm-hmm. So we did have Sonic 2. So I did have experience with Sonic 2 as a kid. I have played a little bit of Sonic 1 when I think they released it. They released the old Sonic games. Like,
Yeah, they've re-released those a bunch of times.
It was like 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles and all that kind of stuff. I think it was for like PlayStation 2 or maybe PlayStation 3 and like a package, a Sega package.
Probably the Sonic Gems collection.
Probably. Yeah. So yeah, I experienced little section of all of it. And then I definitely will never forget Sonic Heroes. That theme song is never going away anytime soon.
Look up Sonic R.
Sonic R.
Sonic R was a racing game on the Saturn.
Okay.
With music that you will not believe.
Okay.
So imagine it's like a Mario Kart style thing, except they're all on foot. There's no carts.
Oh.
And the music, every single track has a different vocal song as its backing, and they are the epitome of mid-90s Japan pop, but recorded in English with American singer, like expatriate American singers. I can't describe it to you. You just have to look up Supersonic Racing and listen to that, and maybe listen to Living in the City, and really the whole soundtrack is amazing, in a horrifying way. I don't know a lot of people who like it unironically, but it is like nothing you've ever heard, and just another example of how the Saturn was doing stuff that no one else was doing, and sometimes there's a reason no one else is doing it, but Saturn still did it anyway. Sonic R, look that stuff up.
Okay.
Also, horrible graphics, just really bad, but it was the first real kind of spin-off, but between that and Sonic Fighters, it was like the first time they really spun off, had enough characters in the Sonic franchise to kind of do a spin-off like that.
And I will say the other one I really remember a lot of, and I don't remember the name of it, but I know it was the first Sonic game coming out for the Sega Genesis. No, it's Dreamcast.
Yeah, Sonic Adventure.
Yes. That one I really enjoyed because it had that Uzi character that was the villain. It was really interesting.
Chaos, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I do remember playing that one when I was being babysat.
Yeah, at the time that was I got the Japanese import of that the year before it came out here, and I remember that was the game you showed everybody to say, like, this is what games look like now, with the tornado and the second level and the orca jumping around in the water and stuff like.
Yeah, the whip around with that tornado.
Sonic Adventure was a graphical revelation. Like before NFL 2K the following year, like that was the big deal.
Nice.
Especially because before that, all we had to play was a Mahjong game and that stupid Godzilla Generations thing.
All right. Well, now everyone kind of knows what our experience with Sonic is. So, what'd you think?
I thought it was pretty good. Like, I mean, I went in sort of like, ugh. I don't really feel the need to see this in the theater, but
you'd rather review Little Women.
Yeah. I was the only one in the theater when I got there. Two people did eventually come in a little late. But yeah, it was just me and a large cup of wine.
It's legit. He showed me a picture. It was an empty theater.
Yeah, you got to pregame some of this stuff. I mean, it was going to be better than Cats. I was pretty sure. I saw that too, but and it was. I thought it was pretty good. It was kind of cute. Like, had some good moments. It's a better made film than Rise of Skywalker. I'll give it that. Like,
I will agree with you 100%.
It has a story, and there's characters in it, and they talk about things, and there's moments where you realize what it's supposed to be about, and there's themes and narrative thrusts, and it's an actual complete film with a beginning, middle, and end, which Rise of Skywalker is not. So so points there. It uses a lot of stuff from the games. It has a lot of weird little deep cuts and references, even like weird stuff in the background, even like street signs that say like Mega Drive. Like that's funny. Like that's good. Like someone was paying attention, making a Mega Drive reference. They use music from the games in places, which is very unusual.
I do like the way they kind of take it and mix it up a little bit, and to someone like us, we would recognize it, but to someone normal, it's like, oh, this sounds like kid music.
You pick up on it.
And I was like, oh, I know that level. That's the first level in the second game of like.
That's the best way to do that kind of stuff. It's like, you put it in there for the people who know what it is, but you make it work so you don't need to know what it is to understand what you're looking at. Like that's the difference between good and bad pandering, basically. In the same way that in The Mandalorian, near the end of that series, the stormtroopers show up in that weird transport thing, the little troop carrier thing, and that is a weird one-off toy that Kenner made back in 1980 because they kept running out of vehicles to make between movies, so they made up new vehicles. And I had that thing. It was just all these stupid little buckets on the side you put the stormtroopers in. And like, so when that thing rolls up, if you don't know what that is, you're like, oh, it's just a troop transport. You do know what that is. You're like, holy shit, they made that thing an actual. It's canon now.
And it makes sense, and it works.
That thing's shown up in a few comic books as well. It's like that's how you do that. That's you put it there for the people that know it, but you don't make it vital to understand it. And Sonic does that a lot, and it really works. And they do a couple times they do call out sort of, there's a point where Robotnik shows up in his full sort of goggles and red jacket thing, and they're like, "What are you wearing?" It's like, it's a flight suit. What are you doing? They do a good job of like making it recognizable to what the game looked. And it's actually, I thought it was interesting that Robotnik's tech makes more sense now than it did in like 1991 because drone stuff is real,
is legit
now. It's like a legitimate thing. So like the fact that he's running around all these crazy high-tech drones doesn't feel like crazy weird fantasy sci-fi like it did in the old Sonic games. It feels like 5 minutes into the future sort of like tech. Like it actually worked really well.
Yeah, and also with that, I mean, you had in the games, I always remembered when you always like went to the end of the level to free the little creatures inside the little cages. Here, Robotnik has actual practicality to himself. Like it's like this guy we don't talk about that works for the government, and we just we'll use him when we can, but we're just it's kind of on the side. But I agree. I enjoyed this film a lot more than I was thinking I was going to.
Yeah, like I'm not going to tell you to run out and see it in a theater, but when it hits streaming, you should definitely take a look at it because it's a fun, brainless night in at the very least.
Yeah, exactly. That's why this film is not one that's like a thinker. Definitely, it's one of just if you just want to enjoy yourself at a theater. This is the kind of film.
And as someone who has very little patience with sort of adapting video games into narrative structures, I think they kind of nailed it. Like it felt like Sonic. It didn't feel like they took a lot of liberties to like make it fit into a film story. It all just sort of worked pretty well. Like it felt like a Sonic the Hedgehog movie in as best a Sonic the Hedgehog movie was ever going to be. And they kept it simple. Like they didn't try to cram the whole universe or all his friends or everything in there. It was just Sonic and Robotnik and James Marsden as the point of view character, and to give us the grounding character to let the audience sort of identify with him and say like, yeah, this is all ridiculous, but you need that. Star Wars has that too. His name is Han Solo.
Yeah, and I love that they just focused only on Sonic for that story because in the end, when you get the hint of Tails coming in, now you're like, okay, we can expand this a little bit more. Yeah. So you just focused on the solid character.
Yeah, the sequel is going to be batshit insane. Like I think they're going to go all for, because there's also a moment early on when the Echidna army is running around.
Yeah,
which is a very, very deep cut for some of the earlier comic books. And I'm like, so they're definitely doing it. They're getting there. And like now that they've laid the groundwork with this one, it will not be crazy in the next one if Tails is there, obviously, if Knuckles shows up, if the Chaos Emeralds show up, if Supersonic happens, like and Robotnik comes back with even crazier stuff, like you feel like they've got it in 2 movies they could possibly get to the Death Egg, like which is the Robotnik's Death Star equivalent that he builds up near the moon.
Oh, very cool.
Like you could, especially because he's on another planet. At the end of the movie.
Yeah, or another universe. I can't remember what they established.
It's another planet. I do think that the other planet, because the premise is that he if he ever gets caught, he has to use his ring. Gold rings are teleporters, basically, that he can teleport to anywhere he can think of, and he has certain safe places he can go. One of them is a planet that's just full of mushrooms, but there's no people there, so he doesn't want to go there because he's lonely, and he wouldn't have any friends there. He doesn't have any friends on Earth either, but the story of the movie is obviously making friends.
He kind of created his own, imaginary family.
He deludes himself into it. But, I think the planet he might end up having to go to, because it's all, and he talks about, it's just all mushrooms. I hate mushrooms. I'm like, that has to be a shot at Mario.
That I never thought about that.
That has to be what that is.
That definitely could be
I can't stand mushrooms. I don't want to go to the planet full of mushrooms. I'm like, well, that's the Mushroom Kingdom, right? Like that's what that is. It's a crack at Nintendo.
That's a really smart way of thinking about it.
Which is a very Sega approach to things.
I do have one, and it's not even our rundown. I just thought of it now. Do you think you would be as satisfied or happy with this film if it was not this certain Sonic CG.
You mean if it was the old one?
If it was the old.
No, I think they made a very wise choice redoing him into the more game design.
I'd agree.
Look,
yeah.
it's he would have been too. I mean, he's a little weird already in some of these scenes, and like having him be that weird uncanny valley, like with the fingers and stuff. Yeah, no, I can't believe they ever needed to be convinced that this was not already the way to go.
Because it looks good.
It looks good. It's recognizably Sonic through the whole thing. Like
absolutely.
Even at the very beginning, you're like, yeah, that's, and it works. Like, it doesn't need to be real. It doesn't need to look. He doesn't need to look like a real animal. There are a couple of moments where, like, there's a moment where he's being carried in a blanket by James Marsden, and it's very clearly like a prop.
Yeah.
And it's very clearly like designed after the old
one
model because it's too skinny.
Yeah, and the hair is not as long. It's like a little shorter on the hair.
But otherwise, they did a pretty good job, especially with the amount of time they had. I am convinced that they had that other model ready to go.
I would agree with you as well.
I think there was some kind of schism in the production over which one to go with, and clearly to me, probably the studio or the producers pulled rank and said, we're going to use the realistic looking one. And the trailer got released, and everybody went and
then they're like,
because I think the director wanted the one we ended up with.
I bet
because he was posting even on Twitter. It's like, yeah, we're back into it. We're gonna fix it. I was like, see, that's a man that knew that what they'd gone with was a mistake.
Or he was really nervous, and he was like, okay, this is either gonna go really good or really, really bad real quick.
And it's doubly weird because like they go so hard in the paint with the Robotnik stuff. Like by the end of the movie, he looks exactly like the game version,
which is
well
like, done.
Yeah, and Jim Carrey's having the time of his life through the whole thing. That's the thing that really sells it for the most part. I think is that the main three performances really work. Like James Marsden is likable and game for things, and he's not being a jerk to Sonic. He just doesn't understand what's going on most of the time, but he sort of rolls with it. Robotnik is fun to watch because Carrey is just like hamming it up like he always used to.
Yeah, who doesn't love Jim Carrey in the '90s when he was hamming it up in the late '90s?
Well, I didn't. But,
I guess I grew up on it, so I mean, it was so nice to see him do that kind of comedy. Where
but it's just it's nice to see him kind of do his old shtick again, and sort of like in the service of this role that actually does demand it. Like that could have been a very flat villain in the hands of another actor. I mean, the only other actor I would have given that role to would probably be Robin Williams if he was still with us.
Yeah.
Robin Williams as an older Robotnik would have actually really worked.
Yeah.
But Jim Carrey's next best thing. He's channeling his Riddler to some degree here. And it functions, and there's moments where you see like he's a jerk to everybody, but he also sort of has fun doing what he does, and you kind of get it a little bit. And then Sonic, I don't remember who voices him, but he's likable. Like he works, and he has the attitude that defines Sonic, but he's not a dick. And there's moments where he clearly does long for some kind of companionship of some kind, and it's cute. It works.
And he's very much like a child. And then the relationship between him and now I forgot the name of the Tom. Tom is his name. Their relationship together is a friendship, but at the same time it feels, and it comes to full circle at the ending when they have them live together with him, is more like a family, and he's their kid. But digging deep into these three characters, let's just jump right into it. I mean, one of the funniest part, I think my favorite part of the beginning of the film and, setting up Sonic and how he is identifying each of the townspeople as a characteristic of themselves. So he called Donut Lord was Tom. His wife, Maddie, was
Pretzel Lady.
And it's just
because she does yoga.
It's just yoga, and it's just like those little fun snippets where I think what they did so well with this film is they did great humor for kids, but they did great humor for adults, and I think that's what makes it so.
There's a couple of good slapstick bits. There's a couple of good visual gags. In fact, that some of which I was impressed that they actually got in because the rush job of having to read. Like, there's a bit where he gets wet. And he fluffs himself off, and he's all like puffed out, like after he fluffs himself off or drives himself off. And I'm like, and it's a fun little like kind of floaty hair like physics trick they're doing with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's pretty good for something they had to re-render in like 6-7 months.
And when I saw that, I was like, that's impressive. Like especially, I was like, wow, like. Because because I saw him with the water and all that, and I was like, is he gonna just wag all his stuff? Tom's gonna be so mad he's gonna get his truck all wet. But I guess that's the least of their troubles with the truck, because that thing went up in flames.
They play with the speed stuff a lot. They play with, there's a scene in a Roadhouse bar that is a direct, let's call it an homage to the Quicksilver scenes in the X-Men movies.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you about that specifically. So, whenever a movie does it now, it's always an homage to the Quicksilver. Are you a person that's like, no, I don't like that they're just gonna copy this? Or
I mean, I don't really know what else you could do with Sonic. I mean, Sonic is sort of, if anyone can justify doing that scene, it's Sonic, because that's his whole thing. I think they more or less made it their own over the course of it, and I think you also had a better version of the only good scene in Justice League, where the Flash is running really fast and suddenly realizes Superman is as fast as he is. And there's an element of that in this, because once Robotnik figures out how to incorporate one of Sonic's quills into his technology, he can make his tech go as fast as Sonic. And Sonic has never had to deal with that before, so that's a good way of upping the stakes. It's not as dramatic as the moment where Superman's eye moves and you realize that he can keep up with Flash in that shot. But it's more effective because Robotnik is the villain, and we're supposed to dislike and be afraid of him, as opposed to Superman, who we are not supposed to be afraid of, except when Zack Snyder makes the movie, because he doesn't understand what a hero is. But like, so yeah, you can definitely see some of that coming from the superhero like subgenre, but like I think that's fine because Sonic falls into that as well, because he is super powered in this. Like there's never been a real solid origin story for Sonic. Like in this, he's basically born fast.
I was gonna say, was there anything in the games, any indication
the games
that
never really
his
go into it?
Would cause an bit?
The games have never really gone into it. There were comics that came out at the time the first game came out that purported to tell the origin. I think they were published in GamePro magazine. And in that, Robotnik is a normal scientist who's friends with Sonic, who is a regular hedgehog who lives in a den with his mother and his siblings and eats cheeseburgers out of the dumpster of the fast food place they live behind, and or something like that. And like, it's basically he's been doing speed tests with Sonic, and at one point Sonic wears these special red shoes and on a treadmill like runs past the speed barrier, sort of like Flash style, and the explosion that happens from it basically turns him blue and turns him into the cartoony hedgehog, and it also zaps Robotnik into the weird egg-shaped villain he becomes. So the story in the old comic was that, like, in those like one-shot comic series that GamePro did, basically the villain and the hero were friends, and now they're not because all this stuff went wrong, but that's how he turned blue. And there's been other versions, like the Archie comics, that is slightly different. He's an alien. The alien hedgehog that can just happens to be able to go really fast is more the origin they've stuck with for kind of vague purposes since the mid-90s.
I know they've done that in the TV show when I was a kid. That was the thing, is he's from
there was space. There was a lot of weird, like, because early games, like in Japan, they sort of didn't seem to consider them an alien planet, or maybe the American one didn't have an alien planet. And then when Sonic Adventure came out, everyone was like, wait, why is he on Earth with people, and people don't seem to think it's weird that a 3-foot hedgehog is talking to them in the street and all this stuff. And they sort of, it's been very loose and not especially well organized, and so it's probably for the best that this movie takes all of that and just sort of picks and chooses what it wants and throws the rest out and just assumes that you're not going to know the specifics, because the vast majority of people do not. But they reference a lot of, he loves chili dogs in that one cartoon, and so he eats a lot of chili dogs in that one bar scene.
Yeah.
And like later he's like, oh, I had chili dogs, they're really good. So it's like the elements are all there.
I wonder how much Puma paid to get that sponsorship to be his shoe choice.
Oh, there's a lot of like, I was surprised at like the call outs on all the real brands on things. Like Olive Garden is all through that thing.
The running.
They talk about Amazon a lot. They talk about Amazon a couple times. They mention like some real movies, some Disney stuff.
They also talk about I don't remember the exact website, but it's used to look at apartments and like
Zillow. There's a Zillow
and
product placement.
I was like, that was Usually it's like this is a jarring product placement, but this one's like I get it.
Like organically, it fits. Although they do show a very long cutaway of the Zillow homepage, on the laptop. But I'm like, all right, they have to go. They have to move. That's part of the deal. Okay.
Yeah. So I was really surprised by that. But so Tom, I know in a conversation we were having earlier, you like this actor. You think
James Marsden is I think he's very good. He's weirdly underutilized for things. He was Cyclops in the original X-Men movies, which he never got to do anything because Cyclops got completely shafted in those films. And then he decided to follow Bryan Singer over to Superman Returns, which is why he gets unceremoniously killed off at the beginning of X-Men 3. And then Superman Returns did nothing, and his role in that was completely thankless. But he doesn't do a whole lot, but I think he's very good at what he does. I think he reminds me of Michael Biehn a little bit in terms of his presence. I would like to see him come back as Cyclops for the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of the X-Men because I think he deserves a second chance. But he's good in this as sort of the everyman. He's a cop in a tiny town in Montana called Green Hills, the Green Hills Zone, and he wants to move to San Francisco, which is
big city.
The big city. Also, the city that Sonic ends up in a lot in other games. I mean, San Francisco, because that's where Sega was located, San Francisco would pop up in the 3D games fairly often.
I was surprised in this film how much I related to Tom, especially with my journey coming here, because I came from Minnesota. The city I worked in is Annandale. It's a very small town, and I did work there. I was just outside the Twin Cities, so I could go to Minneapolis if I wanted to. But to have that longing to do something bigger was something I wanted to do, which is something he wanted to do.
Yeah, he wants to be a cop in a big city so he can have a life and death situation and save someone's life. And
he just wants more meaning in his life.
And clearly, Sonic and all the crap Sonic gets him into provides that for him in the end. So. But it works. If you want to see him really in a weird thing, go look up. It's called Interstate 60: Tales from the Road, which is a magical realist Americana road picture starring James Marsden, directed and written by Bob Gale, who wrote Back to the Future. And after he directed Interstate 60, he felt he had told all the stories he needed to tell in cinema and quit movies.
Oh wow!
So Interstate 60 also includes cameos from tons of different people, including the original Pink Ranger. It is the first time Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd appeared in a movie together since Back to the Future 3. It's almost like a Cannonball Run style, like a bunch of cameos of famous people along the road, all the weird things he gets into. It's worth seeing.
For sure.
Weird little cult movie, but I don't even know if it's cult enough to be called a cult movie. No one knows it exists, but it's also, if you like Kentucky Route Zero, this movie is more of a screwball comedy version of that, but it's not entirely dissimilar.
All right. How would you put ourselves in Tom's shoes? Would you deal with that sister-in-law?
No, I don't really understand why the sister-in-law hates him so much. I mean, you don't really need to, because that's the joke, but like you'd think, I mean, he's a I mean, maybe she doesn't like cops, but like, or maybe she doesn't like, I don't know. Like, I was trying to figure that out. I'm just like, maybe she doesn't like it because she made her sister move to Montana, but it feels like they're from there because his wife doesn't want to leave Montana. Yeah. But her sister does live in San Francisco. Why? So, but he desperately wants to go be a cop in San Francisco. But why don't you apply to another city that your horrible sister-in-law doesn't live in?
Exactly.
I don't know. It's I'm not sure what the backstory is there, but it sounds like just sort of she just doesn't like anyone that her sister dates. I don't know.
Personally, I would love her back for the sequel.
Oh, I'd love to see her come back.
It'd be really interesting to if she just shows up in Green Hills one day and she's just like,
she comes to visit and like that. That could be like the beginning. She could
like,
be
you left me. Like what the hell?
and her car.
Oh yeah, that's right. They took the car. Don't take my car.
I'd definitely like to see some reincorporation there. She could kind of be if they make more movies, she could kind of be like, how all the Harry Potter movies start with like just torturing the Dursleys. Oh, like she could kind of play that role.
Yeah, play that role.
Although the niece is actually very sweet. She gives Sonic her shoes.
And especially when the scene where she's the sister-in-law is tied up and she's just like, untie me, and the daughter's like, no, I'm gonna enjoy myself being free from you for a bit, because clearly
it doesn't just stop with Tom.
Yeah, for sure. What about getting into the sister-in-law? We have Maddie, who I'd say is probably a more secondary character in this one, but seems like the chemistry and all that works really well with all three of them together.
Yeah, like I'd be interested to see her be a larger role in the second movie, just because she dealt with it well. She even says that she calls out how well she deals
she's
with
like,
it.
just so you know, dealing with this great,
handling this incredibly well. Yeah,
high five.
But it was the nice thing about it was like it was a movie that didn't feel the need to add unnecessary conflict or make people jerks to each other for no good reason. Like this was a loving marriage between two people that support each other very strongly, and it's a very positive thing, and they deal with this new complication surprisingly well. And she's a veterinarian, so she cares about animals, even blue alien ones. And like I liked her. I liked everybody in this movie pretty much except the sister-in-law. And I thought I liked her in the sense that the sister-in-law was funny.
Yeah, I like the character of the sister-in-law, not necessarily her
like
herself.
I'm not saying I want to go have lunch with her or anything, but I'm like she serves her purpose in the story and does it well.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to move to Eggman because there's one scene I love with Eggman that happens, and that is when he plays the music and he's starting to try to figure out his hair, and he does this sequence where he has basically he has like a wall that has images on it, and he's running from a dinosaur, and I was just like,
he's basically like playing like AR games.
Yeah, and I was like, this is great. This humor is awesome. His sidekick of that he basically hates but loves all at the same time, and I think
he does love the way he makes espresso. Apparently.
Yes. Oh yes, I love the way you make them. I think the thing I really like about him as well is when Tom is messing with them, he's like, you know what happens to like bullies when they mess with me, and like they're going to be thrown off the planet of the earth, or one guy has only hit me my entire life and he's no longer available. I think there's more complexity they added to him than I ever thought they were going to. He's not very cookie cutter as I thought he was going to be, which I absolutely love because I think in the future it's going to have some payoff later.
His motivation makes sense. He's already halfway nuts.
Yeah.
And but he's like, you can see that he's good enough at what he does that you'd have to just sort of leave him alone, let him do what he does. And then by the end of the movie, where you see him on the mushroom planet, he has gone completely insane.
Yeah.
And whenever but he's like, I'll be back by the weekend, and it's just like, I mean, probably like you believe it by that point. You believe that how he's going to find some way to do that, and it'll be fun to see. There is a little element in this one of like we're telling you this story to get to the next one, but it works on its own well enough. But I can just see the next movie could be sort of the crazy Sonic movie that no one ever thought they'd pull off, but they are going to pull it off because they've earned Eggman as Eggman for the next movie. They've earned Sonic as a powerful sort of mystical speed demon. They've earned Tails as
showing up.
He shows up and he's got his tech thing. You can already see he's invented this little thing to track Sonic.
He's like,
and we don't know what he wants, but and it all ties in with the fact that one of Sonic's main motivation in this movie is he wants friends. He wants to belong somewhere, and if he can find these other friends from these other worlds that Sonic and his shitty friends, as the fandom sometimes calls them, like. That's a whole thing. You're confident enough now that you maybe don't need Tom as much to ground the thing, and the story could be about Sonic and Tails and Knuckles.
And then Tom's just a supportive character in some
and the Chaos
aspect.
Emerald thing, and Robotnik makes it back, and you've got like the classic trio versus Robotnik setup, and he's been to space and done all these weird things, so you can make his technology even crazier. And you could maybe get away with the next movie. You could maybe get away with a giant mech that looks like Robotnik, as his big return thing. Like you could do it. You could. And you've already established him. His drones. If you destroy part of it, another part falls out and becomes another. Like the boss battles have multiple stages in this movie.
That was very clever, and that was something exactly what I was thinking of in the theater. I was like, man, this feels like a boss battle right now, where it's at its stage.
It just escalates
more and more, and Sonic has to use different maneuvers or attacks to be able to figure out each specific boss battle. And I think that was a clever way. The only thing I would say about the very end, and I was like, why didn't they do this? And it's not again, I like this movie very, very much. So the end when he does his final strike to Eggman, I was thinking he was going to do, you know, his classic roll charge where he like rolls on the ground charging, because he never does that. He in this entire movie he actually just runs with his feet, where not as use as much of his roll as
he
you
rolls
think he
here
would.
and there, but he never does use the spin dash.
And I was like, oh, this is the moment he's going to use the spin dash, and it just never used it. And I was
Well,
like,
remember
well,
the spin dash didn't show up until Sonic 2. He didn't have that in the original game.
he did not.
No.
Oh, I don't even remember that. I mean, I played Sonic 2 is my main one, so I've only known of him doing the speed dash.
Yeah, he didn't have that in the first game.
That would make sense now.
So that might be a real deep cut, or this might be an oversight. I don't know. But no, yeah, he only, that was added for Sonic 2. That was the two big things in Sonic 2 were you could do the spin dash and Tails.
Awesome. We're kind of wrapping it up. Do you have any final, you know, thoughts about just this movie, where you would want to see Sonic going into the future? I know we kind of slightly talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, I mean, I think just bring in Tails and Knuckles and
Would you want
make
to
Eggman crazier this time and bring back all the weird tech and just go for broke on it.
would you want to? Do you think it would hurt the film if they brought in more than one extra Sonic-like character? So, like, to just do only Tails this film and then bring in Knuckles like on a third film?
I think you want to bring in Knuckles on the next one just because I think you want the Chaos Emeralds in play. And Knuckles being the guardian of the Chaos Emeralds, that's the conflict. Like, I think because you need the conflict between him and Eggman, but you also need and you need to build the relationship between Sonic and Tails. But I think having conflict between Knuckles, who has good intentions in defending the Chaos Emeralds against all comers, but has to learn that Sonic is a good guy and that they're allies more than they're enemies, and then that Robotnik is the real threat. Like, that's your conflict of journey for the second movie.
Okay.
Especially because you've already set up the echidna thing in this one.
Yeah, that's true.
And because you're going to have an instant dislike between Sonic and Knuckles because Sonic is going to recognize him as the kind of animal that killed his mentor.
That's true. And I think...
Presumably, we don't actually know what happened to Longclaw.
Yeah, that's very true.
Portal closes before we see exactly what happens to her.
Yeah, so maybe she just said...
So who knows?
She said, don't kill me, and then just stop.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
All right, I guess Sonic's gone. It's all good.
Yeah, I would say your next move is to bring Tails and Knuckles into it and have Robotnik come back, like, basically as crazy as the games.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fun, and you could also... Not even if he didn't recognize Knuckles as the people that were trying to kill Longclaw, you know, Knuckles has that attitude it's very opposite of what Sonic's like.
You can go anywhere you want.
You could definitely play with that a little bit. I could see this film very much being, if it was just Tails, setting up some kind of like big moment to happen in a third film, similar to, I mean, it's not going to be the same epicness as like an Avengers, but it's a similar thing where you kind of bring everybody together in this.
Well, I mean, I think you can build to that if you want to for a third film, but my instinct on this would be do the classic Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, Robotnik situation with the second one, because you don't know if you're going to get to make a third one.
That's true.
Like, you may not get lightning in a bottle twice, because this thing hit bigger than I think anybody thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's a number one live action animated film.
Certainly a number one video game adaptation of all time.
Yes, that's what it was.
And it outperformed its market tracking.
Even outperformed Pikachu.
Yeah, beat Detective Pikachu.
And that one I really liked as well as a film. So I was surprised at.
So yeah, I don't know if this one outdoes Mortal Kombat as sort of the most true to its source material, because Mortal Kombat is a super cheesy movie, but it sure is Mortal Kombat.
Oh yes.
But it's up there. I mean, it's probably this or Mortal Kombat or Detective Pikachu or maybe the most recent Tomb Raider are kind of the most effective adaptations of video game material. So it's I mean, surprising. You know, I wasn't really planning to see this before it hit Netflix or whatever, but. And I probably didn't need to see it in a theater, but I didn't dislike it. I had a good time, and even as someone who's not a huge Sonic fan, after all these years of mediocre Sonic games, it was nice to see it done some justice. Like it felt like it was made. I said the same thing about Birds of Prey. I think it felt like it was made by people who cared about it.
Yeah, I agree 100% about both films.
Like,
yeah,
that's what you need.
Which
really.
For Sonic, it's kind of nice to have because Sonic has I mean, I would say probably Sonic has had a little bit of a resurgence since with some creations, but it's been
coming up on the 30th anniversary of America.
Yeah, it's been such a hit or miss thing. I guess my final one I'll put to you, because we saw in the intro of that movie that there was a Sega movie studio type logo they created with a bunch of properties shown on there. Is there one that you're like, I mean, I saw Yakuza on there and I was like, that's a definite, like,
I mean, they've already made a Yakuza movie in Japan.
But I was like, I think it would really work in America if they made one.
Yeah, you could do something like that. I mean, I would like to see Phantasy Star. Like, I think you could do something cool with Phantasy Star, Panzer Dragoon. I would be curious to see what a Golden Axe movie would be like, because that was very prominent in the logo.
Would that be too much like John Connor, though?
Golden Axe?
Yeah.
John Connor? Like
maybe I'm
Terminator?
thinking of a different film. No, not John Carter. I'm sorry.
John Carter?
Yes, thank you.
Golden Axe is like sword and sorcery fantasy stuff.
Okay.
Hack and slash. It'd be Lord of the Rings.
More Lord of the Rings, okay.
I'd love to see Shinobi in some way. Shinobi's got some weird stuff you could play with. But I think Phantasy Star would be an interesting way to take it. Just sort of the sci-fi fantasy space opera stuff.
By them making a logo like that, am I looking too much into it to say that they possibly would be?
I think that's what they want you to think. I think that's their hope. I don't know if it's what will happen, but
with the success of this film,
they might
might get a green light for another, not only just a
certainly
second
another Sonic,
film,
but maybe another,
just one other film to try
attempt,
out and see how that one goes out.
Sure, like why not?
And see if you just didn't get lightning in the bottle this time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe don't try Vector Man. It's probably not your way in, but you never know. And I think game properties are going to become the next like comic book property. You know, like the thing you've heard of that somebody's like, oh, I've heard of that. I'll greenlight that. Sure, like that worked.
Especially with the accessibility of games nowadays and just the change in the thought of the culture itself, that it's a lot more acceptable as a social society.
Yeah, and you've seen some, look at, the big 4th of July movie this year is Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, which is basically the NPC in a GTA game.
Yeah.
GTA Online comes to life and realizes, and just the fact that you can advertise that and everybody knows what you're doing, like, 15, even 10 years ago, you couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Like they would not, the cultural shorthand wasn't there for that. And so I think you're going to see it more and more.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. I'm definitely looking forward to, not just Shane, but as well doing some more spoileds with you, just because you are definitely in the movie area for sure.
It is one of my specialty areas, as anyone who has to spend any time with me can tell you.
So if you want to follow us on social media, I am at Mitch Sikor, Sikor. Matt is at mkeil on Twitter. And we are sifted.net. Check out our content. If you like this content, give us a few dollars via Patreon, and that's patreon.com/sifted. And it really does go a long way for the website. If you're not able to do that, you can still link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account and give us a free $2.50 every single month. Yes, you have to resub up, but it does go a long way for the website, so we really would appreciate if you do that. And check out more content that we have coming to the site. We have more spoileds coming soon. A show may be coming out soon that we might be doing a spoiled on. I'm not going to spoil what it will be, but listen in and you'll catch on to what we'll be doing. So thank you so much, everybody, and we will see you next time.